Woke pirates, yes, they robbed and sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Evely, Ops Sgt-Maj with Veterans for Freedom, back with you now on this 11th day of May, 2023. Almost forgot what year it was there for a second. I see we got some of the regular watchers on board with us this morning. We got Darlene. She says, good morning, everyone. Watching from New Brunswick. Thanks for joining us, Darlene. Doings is here. Great to see you, man. Redemption song. Darlene says, again, every time I see this video, I get choked up. Yeah, you know what? I'm really glad that it's resonating with everybody. It's having an impact. There was quite a bit of work I put into that, but I'm pretty happy with the result. And Evelyn is here, and she says, "Morning all." So welcome aboard, everybody. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Oh, I got my presentation set up here. Okay, so here's our philosophy meme for the day. This is Christopher Marcus, and I'm not really familiar with his work. I'm going to be honest about that. I haven't read any of it, but this was kind of, I think it's hitting home here this morning with some of the things that are going on out there. It's a campaign of demoralization. Okay. Like we just got the news about the Canadian passports being memory hold, essentially. Everything, every symbol of Canadian pride is being erased. And that's all part of the Maoist cultural revolution that's taking place here in Canada. And the purpose is to demoralize. So, yeah. And I think that veterans in particular are a target for demoralization in this campaign. So a lot of it is aimed at us. And, it's like I'm always saying, stay frosty and stay safe out there. So it's important to keep a level head about these things. So to that end, Christopher Marcus says, hardship often prepares an ordinary person for extraordinary destiny. So that's us, guys. That's a big part, I think, of why we sign up to serve in the first place, is to face these kinds of challenges, to get in touch with whatever it is that all those great men who came before us, great men and women, and who came before us, what they, how they gained those insights, how they became great in the first place. And what I do find almost universally is that all of the greatest men and women in history have served. So yeah, I think this is our time. This is our time to shine. We've been through a hell of a lot worse than this before. It's pretty heart-wrenching to see this kind of thing happen in your own country, but you can't take that personally, because if you do, then you're not going to be able to stay frosty and you're not going to be effective in making these decisions. So remember, hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny. So that's where we come in, guys. All right. Here's the meme for the day, and this is Tokyo Rosie. And she says, I don't know about you, but I think the new passport reflects Canada's heritage pretty accurately. And it's hashtag Trudeau Chinese asset. So if you're just listening on Spotify, here's the new Canadian passport, according to Tokyo Rosie. And it's very clearly Chinese. It's got some Chinese writing at the bottom here. You have the a line of Chinese people doing the red salute. That's the clenched fist held upward. You see a lot of Black Lives Matter and other communist materials, but that's what it is. It's the red salute. It's communist, and as you can see, we've got Justin Trudeau's face photoshopped over Mao's head, and his brother Alexandra is. Well, he's got a face like Alexandra on him. He's absolutely confused as to what's happening. Cindy's joining us. She's a faithful watcher. So here's Cindy. Morning, Jeff and everyone. And Marian as well. She says, morning all. Welcome aboard, folks. Okay, so we'll move on here. Here's Sarah on Twitter, and she's showing a picture of the Canadian passport side by side, old versus new. And she's saying, Trudeau, without public consent, removed, quote, in all thy son's command, close quote, from Anthem. Removed Sir John A. Macdonald from the $10 bill. Removed the cross and fleur-de-lis from heraldic crown. Removed Terry Fox, Vimy Ridge, a founding fathers from passport. Wants Canada as, quote, first post-national state. Yeah, when I heard the post-nation state quotes in 2015, I mean, I was alarmed even then because I know what it means. So here we have the passport side by side, and as you can see, the old one. So this is John A. Macdonald and crew, part of our heritage. And next to it, the new one, we have somebody jumping off a wharf into a lake and some people canoeing nearby. And this is all well and good, but I think the object here is to remove that cultural heritage, all these symbols of pride from our materials. It's all getting memory hold. Because we're not allowed to be proud. We're not allowed to feel proud as Canadians. That's the goal here, is to erase all these symbols of pride in an effort to demoralize us. So don't take it personally, folks, but that's what they're doing. And here's Canada in Distress, at Canada Distress on Twitter. And they're saying, got a preview of our next passport. And it's just a picture of essentially the globe, all the continents of the globe, with a hammer and sickle over it from the Chinese flag. So yeah, I think that's essentially what it is. If the Chinese Communist Party says you're allowed to travel, then you're allowed to travel. But otherwise, you don't have permission. So here's Rex Glacer, and he says, you couldn't find normal people this fucking stupid on any street in Canada other than in Ottawa. And I wholeheartedly agree. So this is from the ceremony of the unveiling of the new passports. And just look at these people. They're all over the place. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know where they're going. They're all trying to decide where they need to be standing. And this is just typical of everything I saw in Ottawa for my 7 years there. These people are totally inept, and they lived a very privileged existence that's allowed them to achieve levels of prosperity that you just wouldn't see such dangerously mediocre people achieving anywhere in the country but in Ottawa. Now they can't even get the veils off. That one's, one of them there. Let me just back that up again. I think she's got it sideways. This one is sideways. So yeah, great job, guys. Look at these frickin' squishy bureaucrats. They just, oh God, I hate them so much. Okay, and here's Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre roasts Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for removing historical events like Vimy Ridge from the Canadian passport and replacing them with animals and nature. This is True North that's tweeting this out. And yeah, it's like I said, Vimy Ridge is a galvanizing moment in Canadian history. I didn't look up the quote, but somebody said, you know, they all went up different. They went up Vimy Ridge. Different people, like a Saskatchewan boy, an Indigenous boy, an East Coast boy, and they came down Canadians. They came back as Canadians. It was a very galvanizing moment in our history. There's, I forget how many casualties right now. It's about 3,300. So like more than 9/11, we lost in that battle. And now the recognition for that achievement has just been erased. It's just been memory hold. So. And again, I do think it's deliberate. It's a deliberate attempt to demoralize veterans.
Why is he deleting our veterans from our history? Why is he deleting the 3,598 Canadians who gave their lives so that Canada could have freedom and victory at Vimy? He's erasing them, and with that, he is insulting all of our veterans. The Prime Minister, why will the Prime Minister not stand up for our history, get connected to reality, and keep the images in our passport that make us so proud to be Canadian?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, Trudeau warning. Of course, he's not going to answer the question. The question is, why are you erasing symbols of Canadian pride from Canadian passports and everything else? Well, and the answer is the title of this podcast, which is Aufheben der Kultur. And Aufheben der Kultur is the motto, or something like a motto, of the Frankfurt School. And this is where this all goes back to, all this commie BS. It goes back to the Frankfurt School in Germany. And the Maoist Cultural Revolution was prosecuted along those lines. That's the destruction of the four olds. I made a tweet about this, the destruction of the four olds, and I went back to grab it for the show, and it wasn't there. So what's up with that, Elon Musk? I made 2 tweets this morning, actually, and I can't seem to find them. But yeah, destroy the four olds. That's what Mao said was needed in order to implement a communist revolution. And it's old culture, old habits, old thinking, old ways. So that's what's happening. So why are you deleting, memory holding these symbols of Canadian pride? And here's this duplicitous Ken doll of a communist marionette.
The
Right now, Mr. Speaker, veterans across the country are being reminded of what the Conservatives did around veterans. They wrap themselves in the flags and the symbols anytime they can, but in fact, they nickeled and dimed our veterans. They used them for photo ops. They shut down 9 veteran service offices across the country so they could try and save a little money through cuts. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have always disrespected veterans while they wrap themselves in the imagery. We're going to continue to deliver for the veterans every single day.
The Honourable.
I just want to point out that they were the ones who canceled the Veterans Day. Once that was one of the first things the Trudeau regime did, because we had a day, I can't even remember what day of the year it was, but there was a day that the Harper government had implemented for living veterans and, for veterans of the Afghanistan war in particular. And I think we need that here in Canada. Like, we have Remembrance Day, just like they have Memorial Day down in the US, to remember the fallen, and then they have Veterans Day to honor the living veterans. And I do kind of think that we do need a day for that because, well, I'm wearing the hat. We forget, okay? Like, we forget that we have veterans among us. When we say veterans to your average Canadian, they think of some old guy that was in World War II. And it's like, no, we were in Korea, we were in Afghanistan, we were in Iraq. What about all those guys? So here's Trudeau says, oh yeah, you guys closed a couple of Veterans Affairs offices. Personally, I'm not that concerned about that. I haven't set foot in a Veterans Affairs office since I got out of the military a year and a half ago. The website's pretty good, and I just rather avoid the bureaucrats altogether, to be honest, because they all think that they're better than me. So I'm personally not that worried about that. I don't know what the other veterans think, but yeah, I mean, I actually thought the day to honor living veterans was a really positive step in the right direction from the Harper government in their defense. And I'm not like in the tank for Harper or anything. I think I voted for him once, but that was it.
Leader of the Opposition.
This is the new passport they're so excited about, Mr. Speaker. They erased Vimy Ridge to put in an image of a squirrel eating a nut. They erased Terry Fox, a guy who ran halfway across the country to fight cancer, to put in a man raking leaves. And they erased Quebec City in order to put in what appears to be an image of a boyhood prime minister swimming at Harrington Lake. Could this prime minister be any more out of touch with Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister, from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative Party continues to try to pick fights in the House, this government is focused on delivering for Canadians, for hardworking families and for workers. While they filibuster in committee against the Budget Implementation Act that's going to create greater transfers for workers with the Canada Workers Benefit, deliver on an anti-flipping measures to help homeowners, moving forward in significant measures to help Canadians, they're playing games, Mr. Speaker. We are focused on affordability for Canadians. They're focused on picking fights.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, when the Prime Minister found out of the closing of the Maine, famous deli, he tweeted, "Ouch." But his ouch was not for the 35-year-long employee who lost his job. His ouch was that he's not going to be able to eat his favorite sandwich anymore. We found out from a loyal customer that the reason why the Maine closed is because food prices have skyrocketed under this Prime Minister. He's determined now to increase his carbon tax threefold, which will send food prices flying higher. Why doesn't he park his plane, cancel the hypocrisy, and axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Montreal.
And of course, he's not going to, because it's intended to cripple us economically.
Like Canadians all across the country care deeply about protecting the environment and also know that the only way to create good jobs, strong communities, and a better future is to fight climate change while we build a stronger economy. That's exactly what we have a plan to do. That is why we put a price on pollution and are sending the climate action incentive back to Canadians where it applies, so that 8 out of 10 Canadians are doing better with that. We are fighting climate change and building a stronger economy, two things that the Conservatives apparently know nothing about.
All right. So all the low class BS that you would expect from that POS. Okay. Here's Glenn McGregor, and he says he's tweeting comment from the Royal Canadian Legion on decision to drop the image of the Vimy Ridge Memorial from the new Canadian passport design. So here's the Canadian Legion, and this is their comment, and they say, we are disappointed by the decision to remove an image that signifies the sacrifices made for the very sort of freedom the passport provides. The Vimy Memorial was a fundamental image, also representing a defining moment for Canada, a country emerging as an independent nation with limitless potential. Removing that image in the context of a design change and without knowing the rationale was, to put bluntly, a poor decision. So yeah, not too bad, Legion. I'm trying to be in the habit of giving credit where credit was due. You're still a bunch of pedophiles that don't represent me, but on this point, I find that we agree. So there you go. Okay, and Marion was saying he seems to get really angry when talking about conservatives. Wonder why? Yeah, it's because he's an ideologue and a demagogue. That's what his whole function is to engage in demagoguery, polarize our society, vilify opposition, and pit us all against each other. That's what demagogues do. So Trudeau is doing his job. And Peter is saying, yeah, I've had no prescription for a month now after 28 years having to prove my injuries. The Trudeau government has destroyed my life and I am a veteran. Brother, I am really sorry to hear that. And all our hearts go out to you there. I hope you're staying strong. And again, yeah, I do think that this is all deliberate and they are targeting veterans. Because if there's anybody who's going to, if there's anybody who's going to maintain that connection to something like Vimy Ridge, it's going to be those of us who have served. We're the ones who get it, who understand better than anybody that that the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots. And I know that sounds crazy to most Canadians, but that's a sign of just how far we've actually fallen. Here's Holly Doan, and this is some good news on the cultural front. And she's Blacklock's reporter, so she's tweeting a total of 5,667,205 census users identify their ethnicity as Canadian, according to a new StatsCan data. So that's pretty cool. And she's got a picture here of the census, but yeah, that's a sign that people have pretty much had enough with all this woke nonsense. And here's Dr. Leslyn Lewis, and she's tweeting a video from committee here, and it's exactly the kind of stuff that we've come to expect from the Liberals. So I'll play that, but here's the comment first, and here's Dr. Leslyn Lewis. On April 27th, the Committee on Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities was forced to cancel a meeting due to witness refusing to testify, including the Minister of Infrastructure, on the deep links between McKinsey and the Canada Infrastructure Bank. In response, Conservatives brought a motion to compel key witnesses to come testify. 4 days' notice was given before the motion was brought forward. Liberal, NDP, and Bloc members had ample time to add their witnesses to the list, which the NDP and Bloc did. The Liberals, however, showed up to committee the day to disrupt and filibuster. I was personally taunted and mocked by MP Jennifer O'Connell and MP Vance Bedaway. MP O'Connell went as far as to call this legitimate motion a conspiracy theory, shoo me with her hands, and tell me to get out of the committee room. And that is what we're dealing with, a bunch of self-righteous narcissists who think they know better than the rest of us and that they're in charge. They're in charge of all our conversations and our speech. And this really goes all the way back to, I'm offended. I said that really early in my military career, actually. It's just like, it seems that when people say I'm offended, what they really mean is I'm in charge of this conversation now. And that's the Liberals. They just they feign all this butthurt so they can gaslight people into compliance. So, okay, back to Leslyn Lewis, and she says, Liberals could have submitted their witnesses like everyone else, but they chose to dismiss a valid motion, disrespect other elected members, and waste taxpayer resources through attempts to block parliamentary process. On May 4th, the quote, conspiracy theory, close quote, motion passed unanimously with Liberal amendments, but only after the Liberals' obstruction was wasted 3 committee meetings to get to that point. It's clear the Liberal Party has one job: to bully, gaslight those who they disagree with, and label everything conspiracy theory to silence debate and avoid accountability. And that is what the Frankfurt School talks about when I talk about Aufheben der culture. That's a lot of what they talk about in terms of how to deal with the reactionaries. The reactionaries in political science these days in our universities are just right-wingers. But in Marxist theory, like the reactionaries are the people that are going to stand up to the Marxist takeover. Yeah, this is straight out of that playbook, I think, to marginalize anybody in our society that stands up to the communist takeover.
Well, another day, another conspiracy theory by the Conservatives. I'm very pleased to be here on this committee today to see that the Conservatives have not lost their ability to
what an airhead, first of all.
Invent scandals where one doesn't exist, and to call this an affront to transparency. I would suggest it's an affront to reality.
And James is here. He's saying, I'm a bit late. Good morning, Jeff. Push-ups, man. 20 push-ups. Let's go.
So the only affront that we have here today is to reality within the Conservative Party, because how can anybody suggest that there is not any transparency while you have witnesses here? Sorry, excuse me, I have the floor, and I'd appreciate. Excuse me, I have the floor.
You came here deliberately to cause conflict. That is your role. That has always been your role. This has been a peaceful committee until you intervened, and that is how you speak to your colleague. Get out of here. You said very eloquent. Very eloquent. You're not going to bully us. You are not going to bully us. Canadians are going to hear from the witnesses, and we demand that.
Dr. Lewis, Ms. O'Connell had the floor.
I'd like an opportunity to respond to you. Mr. Chair, I was elected by the residents of Haldeman, Norfolk, to be in this room to defend taxpayers, and another member told me, an elected official, to get out of here, saying that I don't have a place in this room. She came and she has disrespected not only Canadian taxpayers, but the entire residency of Haldeman, Norfolk, by telling an elected official to get out of the committee room. I was told to get out of here. I would like her admonished for that unparliamentary behavior.
Yes.
Before we proceed.
Admonish her. Absolutely. And that is what it comes down to, is they have these people, the Liberals, have this contempt for regular Canadians. Leslyn Lewis, I think, is doing a good job of highlighting right here, because she's like, I'm here to represent people, Canadians. So when you disrespect me like that and you dismiss me like that, you're dismissing Canadians. And great job, Leslyn Lewis, in standing up to these bullies. This is how you talk to these people. Great job.
Dr. Lewis, if you heard those words coming out of her mouth, which I did not, your recourse,
and they did come out of her mouth,
is to call a point of order and say, Mr. Chair, this was said to me, and I would like the following action to be taken.
So I'm going to move a motion or an amendment, and then I'll speak to it.
Okay, we did not have notice of her motion. 48 hours notice. I'm speaking. Please, I have the floor.
Yeah.
Please do not interrupt me when I have the floor. Thank you. We did not have notice, so I would like to confer with my colleagues for a few minutes to speak about the procedural path forward before we decide on what to do.
I would like to move that the committee resumes debate on Ms. Lewis's motion of May 2nd. It's the motion as amended that we finished discussion on and adjourned the meeting the other day. And I think that's where we need to pick up, since neither The motion in front of us in paper doesn't have 48 hours notice, nor does Ms. O'Connell's motion, which she described as an amendment. But there's nothing to amend because there's no motion currently on the floor at this meeting.
So we'll move forward with a vote on the revised motion.
Good Lord.
Everybody has a copy. Everybody fully understands. Everybody's in favor. Anyone opposed? It is adopted.
Well, there you go. All that drama for nothing. I mean, she's not even following the process. Real professional. Okay, so here's Holly Doan again, and she says, Commons votes unanimously for parliamentary committee hearings into Chinese intimidation campaign. So that's good news. And here's the one para that I can get from Blacklock's reporter, because I don't have a subscription. Probe Chinese targeting MPs. Chinese subterfuge against parliamentarians will be investigated by the House Affairs Committee. Unanimous Commons vote for full hearings came yesterday as one cabinet representative complained of innuendos against the Prime Minister. All right, so at least we have that. And here's Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, and he's tweeting, Canada, where we have the parents of a young man prejudiced enough to believe that men and women exist. Canada, where we cancel the parents of a young man prejudiced enough to believe that men and women exist. And this is from LifeSite, and they're reporting that Josh Alexander says his parents have been suspended from their Ontario school board jobs. My parents are under attack simply for having raised me. They couldn't get to me, so they've attacked my family. Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of things that they're up to, the kind of tactics that they're up to here is they'll go after your family. Renfrew County, Ontario. A Canadian Catholic high school student, Josh Alexander, has said that his parents have been suspended from their jobs with an Ontario school board and are under investigation, something he suspects is in retaliation to his outspokenness against a gender ideology. On Monday, Alexander posted a tweet disclosing that his parents are, quote, under attack, close quote, following his own suspension last year from school after asserting that God made only two genders, male and female. And there's the tweet. You can go check that out. Quote, I've been informed that both my mother and father have been put on leave and removed from the classroom, close quote, he wrote. Quote, my parents are under attack simply for having raised me. They couldn't get to me, so they've attacked my family, close quote. In a recent interview, Alexander gave more information saying, quote, this morning I found out that my mom has been put under investigation and removed from the classroom indefinitely, close quote. According to Alexander, his father had been removed from work 2 weeks earlier and is likewise, quote, under investigation, close quote, although it is unclear exactly for what reason his parents are being investigated. Alexander believes his parents are being attacked, quote, simply because they're my parents, close quote. Quote, I'm a young man. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions, close quote. He continued, quote, I just really wish it was me facing those consequences. I mean, they arrested me. They put me in cuffs in the back of the cruiser a couple of times, but I don't care. I'm still fighting, and that's not going to discourage me. But it's just wrong that my family has to pay the price for that just simply because I said that God made male and female in my classroom, close quote. Alexander said, adding, quote, and the consequences have been fairly significant up to this point, close quote. LifeSite News reached out to Alexander to acquire more information about the alleged situation, but has yet to receive a reply. So great on Josh. I had the pleasure of meeting this young man in person at Jeremy McKenzie's fundraiser there in Hamilton a few weeks ago, and he spoke. And I said he was the biggest stud in the room. This really gives me a lot of hope for the future when I see the younger generation, Gen Z, coming out like this. Gen Z is strong, I think. They're not having any of this stuff, so it's really good to see. Okay, and here's CTV, the debate. Canada's new passport design has been unveiled. Security features have been enhanced, but images of Vimy Ridge and Terry Fox have been replaced by seasonal scenes, including a man raking leaves. And they're doing a poll here, and it says, your take. So they say, do you like the changes? And the yes is at 9.3% and the no is at 90.7%. And you can see the comments here. We've got Ann Roll, the first one. Deleting the history of a country is akin to book burning. Yep, that's right. So go weigh in on that poll if you get a chance. That's CTV, the debate. And here's Concerned Canadian, and he's tweeting an article. He says, "We need the same regulations in Canada. We can't allow the CCP to purchase our valuable farmland or strategic companies and infrastructure. Trudeau won't even consider this. Why?" Retweet if you concur. So this is the ragingpatriot.org. And article is Florida government Ron DeSantis takes steps to crack down on Chinese Communist Party influence in Florida. Disclaimer, this article may contain the personal views and opinions of the author. Okay, whatever. While the swab in Washington attempted to add a bunch of anti-American legislation in a TikTok ban, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is taking action against the Chinese Communist Party in Florida. The Republican government, who is rumored to be geared up for a run in the GOP presidential primary, signed 3 bills aimed at blocking CCP influence. DeSantis understands the threat coming from the People's Republic of China. Experts warn about China's desire to spread its influence culturally, economically, politically, and militarily by whatever means necessary. Quote, Florida is taking action to stand against the United States' greatest geopolitical threat, the Chinese Communist Party, close quote. Governor Ron DeSantis said. I really appreciate Governor DeSantis's manner of speaking too. He's quite candid. I like how he's highlighting the Chinese Communist Party as the greatest geopolitical threat. It is. And all this stuff about Russia and Ukraine is just to get us to take our eye off the prize here. And here's a quote from DeSantis. He says, "I'm proud to sign this legislation to stop the purchase of our farmland and land near our military bases and critical infrastructure by the Chinese agents, to stop sensitive digital data from being stored in China, and to stop CCP influence in our education system from grade school to grad school. We are following through on our commitment to crack down on communist China," close quote. Yeah, I'm glad they're getting it out of the grade schools too, because I really think that a lot of the transgender agenda ties back to that as well. Back to the article. According to the Blaze, the 3 bills the government signed, quote, include SB 264, the interests of foreign countries, SB 846, agreement of educational entities with foreign entities, and SB 258, prohibited applications on government-issued devices, close quote. SB 264, quote, restricts conveyances of agricultural lands and other interests in real property to foreign principals, close quote. Chinese citizens will, with quote, non-tourist visas, close quote, will be allowed to purchase single parcels of land under 2 acres located at least 5 miles away from military installations. So that's all good stuff by Governor DeSantis there. Go ahead and check that article out. That's, I think, good enough for our purposes here. Okay, so Concerned Canadian is tweeting, "The corruption is unprecedented in the U.S., the adage that power corrupts the beholder is personified. Do we have a similar problem in Canada?" Yeah, I think we do. So a lot of stuff is coming out of the United States. Now, they've been, they're a little further ahead than we are, both in terms of, I think, infiltration, perhaps, but also in terms of the response. They've actually closed some of their Chinese run police stations. They've made arrests. So they're moving on this stuff, but we're still not. So it seems like perhaps we're more captured than they are, but only time will tell. So here's Fox News.
Fox News alert, explosive new evidence that the Biden family was taking bribes from corrupt foreign nationals while Joe Biden was vice president. Here's House Oversight Chairman James Comer.
The committee is concerned by the complicated, suspicious network of over 20 companies we have identified the Bidens and their associates used to enrich themselves. Most of these companies were limited liability companies formed during Joe Biden's vice presidency. The bank records show the Biden family, their associates, and their companies received over $10 million from foreign nationals.
$10 million to the Biden family, and nobody can tell us what the Biden family business is. No one. And 20 different shell companies. That sounds legit. And it wasn't just money from China or Ukraine. Money was coming in from everywhere.
While Vice President Biden was lecturing Romania on anti-corruption policies, in reality, he was a walking billboard for his son and family to collect money. The Bidens received over $1 million for the deal. And 16 of the 17 payments to their associates' account that funneled the Biden's money occurred while Joe Biden was vice president. In fact, the money stops flowing from the Romanian national soon after Joe Biden leaves the vice presidency.
Kind of like the Clinton Foundation. The money just stops flowing once she's not going to be in charge. So corrupt foreigners were funneling millions into the Biden family while Joe Biden was lecturing them about foreign corruption. What a racket. Fly to a corrupt country, tell them to clean up their act, and then everybody who's corrupt sends the Bidens money for protection. That's how it works.
Exactly.
All these corrupt countries have dirt on the Bidens. The whole world now has the United States by the Bidens. So when Joe says he takes orders as president, it makes sense. But setting up 20 shady shell companies to launder foreign cash to, and then spreading it out to your entire fam in order to hide it from the IRS, that's called money laundering. It's called tax evasion. It's called corruption.
Absolutely.
And this oversight committee is full of bankers, and bankers.
Okay, that's good for Fox News. That's probably an 11-minute clip. I'm not going to show the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, it's really starting. The details are starting to come out. 20 shady shell companies tied to Biden's. That's kind of the bottom line. And I think some of this money actually went to his grandson or something. There were children that were receiving money that were in the Biden family. So what their jobs were exactly is clear. Well, it's not clear. They're bag boys. And James is reporting push-ups done. Okay, everybody golf clap for James. Good job, James. Golf clap. All right. And here's Larry Brock, and he's tweeting, suspiciously, the illegal operation of foreign agents in Canada is not a good enough reason for the Liberals to appropriately intervene. Instead, they deflect and mislead Parliament. Enough of the smoke and mirrors. It's time to finally close down Beijing-backed police stations. Yeah, no kidding. The Americans are way ahead of us on that one.
Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, you would think that the illegal operation of foreign agents in this country would serve as a good enough reason for these Liberals to appropriately intervene. Instead, the public safety minister chooses to mislead Canadians by claiming that the RCMP have shut down all Beijing-backed police stations, when in reality, 2 Montreal groups under investigation for hosting these stations have not received any closure requests. How much longer do Canadians need to wait before this government finally closes down these illegal Beijing-backed stations?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, by now my colleague will know that the RCMP provided an update that they took action to disrupt the activities in regards to these so-called police stations. And as you heard the Prime Minister say, it is this government's expectation that if any such foreign interference activities occurs or pops up.
Look at Elizabeth May in the background there, like hideous cackling Harridan. Holy smokes.
Up again, that they will take the necessary action to keep our community safe. More to the point, Mr. Speaker, there's $49 million to assist the RCMP in budget 2023. And instead of tough talk and saber rattling, the Conservatives should support that budget so that we can protect our communities from foreign interference.
Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, actions speak louder than words. Canadians deserve no less. Right. This government's apathy concerning the threats of foreign interference continuously fails to protect Chinese Canadians across this country. Enough of the smoke and mirrors. Last week, on this very same topic, this minister stressed the importance of communication and transparency in this House. It's time for that minister to demonstrate it and finally answer the question: when will the government close down all these Beijing-backed police stations in Canada?
Canada. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that member opposite knows full well that operational independence is a pillar of our democracy. We put and repose our confidence in the RCMP and our national security apparatus.
Yeah, just like they did in Portapique, right?
To protect our communities from foreign interference. Mr. Speaker, instead of misguided statements like the one that the member opposite just said, he should actually put the work into protecting our institutions, including the people in this chamber. And all of that is built on the foundation of the work that this government is doing since we took the reins in 2015.
Yeah, and on that, Colleen is saying it's like a soap opera. It never ends. What exactly is the point of this anyhow? Never any answers. Yeah, the answers are not the point. They're clearly for the purpose of deflection. And even the questions are not the point. The thing is, I think we're at a state right now where opposition MPs are not even really asking questions. Like the answers are clearly not answers, but the questions are not really questions either. These are statements. This is for the purpose of getting the information out there to the public. And to answer your question, Jane is saying we all need to take a stand. We all need to push back. The psychos running these things from the highest offices in the land are not going to stop. Yep, that's fairly accurate, I'd say. So that is the answer. We all need to take a stand, and we all need to push back, and we all need to get engaged. Because we can't just sit back and count on the Commons doing this. It's completely compromised. Okay, and this is the Raging Patriot article again. My bad. Here is Derek Sweet, and he's tweeting, do you need proof that the UN, WHO, and WEF have an evil agenda? They want to legalize pedophilia. There is a reason they chose Justin Trudeau as their WEF puppet in Canada. Read, share, and speak up. So here is the spectator.au, and the title is Children Targeted by WHO, quote, Standards for Sexuality Education in Europe, close quote. The World Health Organization has orchestrated a, quote, framework for policymakers, educational and health authorities, and specialists, close quote, titled Standards for Sexuality and Education in Europe. Its purpose to standardize, in other words, override, the diverse teaching practices of each sovereign nation within Europe and the wider international community with regards to sexual education. Having all but forced European nations to comply, the United Nations is seeking to expand a similar framework to all UN member states, including Australia. The framework is called International Guidance on Sexuality Education, produced as part of the UN Education 2030 and countersigned by UNICEF. The WHO are now actively promoting the framework. In mid-April 2023, the Commission on Population and Development failed to reach a consensus on advancing the strategy, providing a reprieve for now. Quote, nobody is happy with this result, said the spokesperson representing Senegal. They went on to point out that people come from different, quote, horizons and realities, close quote, and that the Commission must, quote, respect all cultures, close quote. The problem with communist-style policy is that it demands a uniform approach with identical ideological outcomes irrespective of culture. And what sort of vision does the WHO have in mind for the world's children? Their preferred framework demands that sex education bring at birth and be guided by the state via the relentless work of educators instead of the current model of parent-led development with catch-up assistance from schools. European countries have already begun integrating the WHO agenda into their curricula, with Germany, for example, using the WHO document widely for, quote, development and revision, advocacy work, and training educators, close quote. Quite frankly, the Standards for Sexuality Education in Europe is a rapey document that reads like the mind of a child-fiddling psychopath given control of public health. The UN document makes their intention very clear that, quote, this framework aims to empower children and young people to develop respectful social and sexual relationships. These skills can help children and young people form respectful, healthy relationships with family members, peers, friends, romantic or sexual partners. Close quote. The framework also teaches children what consent consists of, meaning they assume a child can consent to sex. The WHO lays out its reasons for teaching children aged 0 to 6 the detail of biological reproduction, that is, children who are still young enough to believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy. By age 6, the WHO wants the education industry, and presumably their teachers, to expose children to the concepts of intercourse, masturbation, and pornography. By age 9, they're expected to reach an adult knowledge of sex, including teaching of masturbation and viewing online pornography. At age 12, remembering that we are still talking about young children, the WHO wishes the official European education course to explore political and emotional responses to sex, puberty, and gender. What the hell is a political response to sex, puberty, and gender? Starting sex education at birth is an indoctrination of the mindset of these people. 0 to 4-year-olds should be able to distinguish between consensual and non-consensual sexual interaction and develop a, quote, positive attitude, close quote, to the different sexual lifestyles of adults. These standards, if you can call them that, from part of the initiative launched by the WHO Regional Office in Europe in 2008, were further developed by the Federal Center for Health Education with the collaboration of 19 experts from the Western European countries. In their own words, it was created as part of a new need for sexual education, quote, triggered by various developments during the past decades, close quote. These include a globalization and migration of new population groups with different cultural and religious backgrounds, the rapid spread of new media, particularly the internet and mobile phone technology, the emergence and spread of HIV/AIDS. That was just the boomers. Increasing concerns about the sexual abuse of children and adolescents, and not least, changing attitudes towards sexuality and changing sexual behavior among young people. Grooming, changing sexual behavior among young people. That's grooming. It sounds as though bad parenting, incompatible cultural practices, and lackluster policing of child sexual abuse is being used as an excuse to do away with fundamental child protection standards and the innocence of children that the West used to pride itself in. The original argument for introducing basic levels of sex education into the school system centered around child safety. These courses were designed as a catch-up, particularly for girls who had reached an age where it was possible for them to get pregnant, to ensure they understood reproductive essentials in order to protect themselves. The point was to avoid dangerous adolescent pregnancies and abuse, not to encourage sexual behavior in minors. Exactly. Now it appears that adults seeking affirmation of their sexual choices are flooding the education system with age-inappropriate content that is being solidified through the edicts of an unelected global bureaucrats such as the WHO. In this case, the education framework points out that there is an increase in the spread of sexual disease among children and a rise in teen pregnancies across Europe. But what the report does not explain is this is largely being seen among migrant demographics after coming from cultures where the abuse and sexualization of children is common compared to European standards. Yeah, that is true. Elsewhere in the world, children get the absolute crap abused out of them sexually, and that is a predominantly Western construct, this idea of the innocence of children, and that it needs to be protected. Just look no further than Afghanistan with the Bacha Bazi. That means boy girls. Those are human human blow-up dolls. Essentially, they're boys, they're children, they're minors. That a lot of these Afghan National Army commanders would just kind of drag along with them everywhere they went for their own gratification after hours. It's pretty sick, but I think that this is part of the default setting on the human species. I'm always saying that, and we do see that the sexualization of children is something like a natural constituent of tyranny. Aldous Huxley did a wonderful job highlighting that with all the commentary on forced erotic play in A Brave New World for children. And that's what we see is, I think the world's dictators are taking a vote and deciding that having sex with kids is something that should be promoted. Back to the article. There are countless articles detailing the doubling of child abuse in recent years, with some publications describing Europe as, quote, a hub of child abuse material, close quote, and Save the Children reporting that child migrants are being, quote, systematically abused by police, people smugglers, and other adults, close quote. It could be argued that policies like that of former Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, in her 2015 refugee pledge, encouraging Europe to open the floodgates to mass migration and thus the escalation of people smuggling rings, is largely to blame for the danger children in Europe now face. And I do talk a lot about, like, say, for example, the Cologne rape scandal there. There was the mass sexual assault in 2015, New Year's Eve, in Cologne, Germany, where over 1,000 women were sexually assaulted. It took the CBC an entire 7 days to even so much as acknowledge it. But yeah, that's what they're importing. Is there are especially in Africa and in the Middle East, there are these. There's a phenomenon known as taharushgamia. It means the rape game, and that's what the men will do is they will like in public engage in this mass sexual assault against women if they're, say, not covering their hair, not wearing a niqab or a hijab or a burqa or something like that. So, yeah, they tend to think that, and blonde women to them are like porn sluts. That's kind of the only time that they really see blonde women is online. So they tend to really go after them. And I remember, was it Laura? What's Laura's? Laura Lohan, I think. The reporter who was covering the Arab Spring in 2015. She was the victim of one of these assaults. She talks about that quite a bit. Jeez, her name escapes me right now, but yeah, that's something to check out because it's a real social phenomenon, and this is exactly the reason that we have borders and immigration laws in the first place, is to protect us from importing these kinds of social phenomena from the third world and elsewhere. Let's see. The solution would seem obvious. Focus on the integration of migrant communities into the established moral order of European nations and severely punish adults who carry on illegal practices imported from their homelands while enforcing extreme criminal penalties on people smugglers and the police who assist them. Above all, you might imagine that parents and the education system would seek to shelter children from the sexual world in their formative years to ensure the cycle of degeneracy was broken. Exactly. That is not what is being proposed by the WHO. In reference to traditional and highly successful sex education in schools, the WHO says, traditionally, sexuality education has focused on the potential risks of sexuality, such as unintended pregnancy and STI. The negative focus is often frightening for children and young people. Moreover, it does not respond to their need for information and skills, and in all too many cases, it simply has no relevance to their lives. Yeah, okay, not getting AIDS has no relevancy to their lives. This is absurd. Well, yes, children should be frightened of pregnancy. It could kill them. As for, quote, a need for information and skills, close quote, children do not need skills in sexual practice. Yeah. Indeed, the document appears to lament that most Western children have their first sexual encounter between 16 and 18. The WHO adds, a holistic approach based on an understanding of sexuality is as an area of human potential helps children and young people to develop essential skills to enable them to self-determine their sexuality and their relationships at various developmental stages. It supports them in becoming more empowered in order to live out their sexuality and their partnerships in a fulfilling and responsible manner. Remember, we are speaking of children, not teenagers. Yeah, that's right. We're talking like 0 to 4 and 0 to 6. That's good enough for that article, I think. But go ahead and check that out. That's the Spectator in Australia. Yeah, I mean, that I think it's exactly right. That a lot of folks at the WHO and these international organizations that come from foreign dictatorships where these kinds of cultural practices are widely accepted, yeah, they like having sex with kids. They don't see anything wrong with that. And they're trying to change us to make us more like them. We've already fought these hard-won battles in our own society, and the rest of the world needs to catch up. But the fact of the matter is, in recent years, we've started kowtowing to the world's dictators every time they take a vote at the UN. Let me see. Let's throw to a comment here. Darlene says, years ago, women were not allowed to vote. Now women are being abused again. Yeah, I think this is one of those stages where we're falling backwards. It's a fourth turning. I talk about a fourth turning all the time. Every 4 generations, we seem to fall backward in this way. And it's because the generation that's raised in the wake of the previous crisis, the boomer generation raised in the wake of World War II, is at peak institutional power right now. And every time the generation born in the wake of a major crisis reaches peak institutional power, we end up in another crisis. What I see them doing is they're sort of parroting the propaganda of our foreign adversaries to satiate their daddy issues for the greatest generation who won the Second World War. They tend to think that all that stuff their daddies tried to warn them about when it comes to the evils out there in the world beyond the boundaries of the empire. They tend to think of that stuff as just being racist and backward and this kind of thing. And so they go completely in the opposite direction and start parroting the dogma of those adversaries just to get their great daddies rolling in their graves. And Debbie is saying, again, children are their goal. They are indoctrinating before the age of 4 to accept rape and abuse to be considered a special love. They are decriminalizing pedos. Kids are prey. They are the goals. These are the goals of the WHO, WEF, and the UN consortium. These sick FKS need to be locked in one of their 15-minute concentration camps in a desolate, secure island and left to rot in their own hell. Yeah, I don't think that I have the imagination to come up with an appropriate punishment for pedos. I guess I'd like to see them locked in a deep, dark hole for the rest of their natural lives somewhere in the Arctic. I don't really believe in the death penalty. If ever there was somebody who should get it, it should be one of these sick freaks. But anyway, I think living out that natural life in absolute misery is probably a worse fate than death. And a very common one Darlene is advocating for here is having them castrated. Yeah, I mean, I definitely empathize with the sentiment, but I'm of the mindset that human beings can't be trusted with that kind of power. And I remember when the Innocence Project first came out in the United States, they were finding 1 in 8 death row inmates were being exonerated by DNA evidence. So that's a pretty alarming ratio. That's a pretty high rate of error for something like taking somebody's life. So I just don't think that we can be trusted with those kinds of punishments, that we can't go back on, that we can't reattach a penis, and we can't give back a life, but we can give people monetary compensation for wrongful incarceration. So I tend to favor that personally, but I do empathize with the sentiment. I really do. So here's NL Media. Is that Newfoundland? I wonder. Almost 25,000 people in Alberta, Canada evacuated as wildfires rage across the region amid hot weather and high winds. Does anyone have a plan for all those displaced Albertans to vote in the upcoming election? Was this by design? Now, we've seen a completely inadequate response, I think, to a lot of the evacuations, and I've seen some town halls where people are pretty outraged at the lack of response and planning and all of this stuff from public officials. Again, it's the boomer generation of managers and leaders. They don't read, they don't follow any processes. They just make it up as they go, and then get mad at the rest of us when we point to policies and plans and stuff like that. That was my experience for 20 years in the military, and now I think everybody's getting a taste of what it's like to be in Canada's military, where nothing makes sense and nobody's doing the right thing.
Antifa starting the fires in Alberta. Now, you might be like, oh, you're fucking nuts.
Now, I don't think he's nuts. I said on the program already that a lot of this stuff I've been tracking for years has been the result of arson, whether it be in Australia or otherwise. Like, I think it says everything we need to know that global warming keeps finding highways beside which to light these fires. They don't start off in the middle of the bush anywhere. They're near major roadways.
Justin Trudeau had China's help to win an election. So what makes you think Rachel Notley wouldn't do something dirty like that? It makes perfect sense. Start fires in all the conservative ridings. Let those fires go out of control. And then don't have a way for them to vote. But as Albertans, we're smarter than this. That's how it's going to go down. Rachel Notley wins because people can't vote. We will just overthrow Rachel Notley's government. So, is there a plan in place to have evacuated people vote? Does anybody know of one? Because I'd sure like to know. Antifa starting the fires in Alberta.
Okay. So that's some good commentary there. Obviously, I don't advocate for any kind of a violent overthrow. Veterans for Freedom is all about lawful civic action, and whatever it is, it's got to be peaceful. I really don't think that we're going to win in any kind of a violent overthrow. And veterans are the last political violence come home. Like we see what it does to other countries. So we're the last people that want to see that kind of thing. But other than that, I think this is a reasonable question. And I don't think the thing is that he says, do you really think that Rachel Notley wouldn't do that? I don't think Rachel Notley has that kind of power. I don't think that Rachel Notley is plugged into this network, but I do think that the network would support Rachel Notley over a conservative, because they're just looking for their ideological bedfellows to get in there, and then they can be manipulated very easily. So, and Rhea Hayes is over on YouTube saying, violence is never the answer. Not never, but never in Canada. I can tell you that. It's not going to be. It's not going to go down like that, and it shouldn't. Let's see. So here's Holly Doan again, and she's saying filibuster of budget bill C-47 enters second week. Opposition has demanded Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland appear for 2 hours questioning if she wants the budget passed. So this is kind of the stuff that the Liberals have been talking about. Everybody should just go ahead and pass their budget if they want to help veterans and whatever. So here's the quick one para from Blacklocks, and they're saying a filibuster of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's budget yesterday entered its second week as a Conservative MP talked about the clock at the Commons Finance Committee. The opposition demanded Freeland appear for a minimum of 2 hours questioning if she wants the budget passed. Quote, I feel sad about that. God. Poor Chrystia Freeland. And here's Blacklocks again, and they say documents confirm the Canadian Mint lost a fortune, literally millions, on a failed scheme to invent its own digital currency. This information is commercially confidential. So here's that paragraph. Let's see. The Royal Canadian Mint yesterday released figures confirming it lost millions on failed digital currency venture. Management would not comment. Quote, the Mint considers that information is commercially confidential. That information is commercially confidential. And we pay for this stuff. Commercially confidential, my freaking arse. Okay, it's the same thing when they're talking about vaccines, right? They hide behind all that stuff. Okay, so here is protection of the education rights of kids. And they're saying Canadian school district promotes, quote, sudden death cardiac arrest, close quote, as the number one cause of death. Below is a graph of myocarditis reports from the COVID-19 vaccine for adolescents. You decide what caused the cardiac arrest. Starting in 2021, look at the statistical significance of and increase of myocarditis in June 2021 on, quote, Good Morning America, close quote. Walensky said that the risk of myocarditis was extremely rare and there was overwhelming data the vaccines were safe for children, even after hundreds of cases of myocarditis had been reported to the CDC, had been aware of a safety signal since February. So here's the graph. And if you're just listening, we have from 2010 up to 2020. It doesn't even register. You can't even, it's like zero. Everything's zero for myocarditis. And then 2021, according to VAERS, that reports of myo and pericarditis, they shoot up to about 16,000. And then in 2022, it goes down to about 10,500. And in 2023, we're somewhere around 1,000. So yeah, that's an astronomical increase. Obviously, it's obvious to all of us, I think. But they're just turning a blind eye to this stuff. Deny. And they're still pushing the vaccines for kids here in Canada. It's a very sad state of affairs. And here is essentially the same graph. And this is Canadian Mama tweeting 10 times more vaccine doses were administered from 1990 to 2020 than in 2021 and 22. Despite this, there were 3 times more vaccine-associated deaths reported to VAERS in 2021 and 2022 than the previous 30 years combined. And yet, the leader of our opposition said this in April 2021. And here's Pierre Poilievre. His tweet is being pasted over this graph. And he says, today would be a good day for Trudeau's tearful apology for leaving the borders open to COVID and failing to deliver enough vaccines in January and February, resulting in a third wave. Yeah, right. I got to call this guy out, I think, on this here and there, because he didn't say anything about the widespread human rights abuses taking place in Canada until the Freedom Convoy showed up in Ottawa and he saw a bandwagon he could jump on. And even then, he still turned around and threw his own cabinet ministers or shadow cabinet members under the bus for even so much as meeting with Christine Anderson, calling her vile. So he, I believe, is, he's obviously controlled opposition. He's handpicked. Okay, he's a ringer. They brought in from Saskatchewan into a historically conservative riding, a stronghold just outside of Ottawa, so he could be right there in the swamp, being groomed by the swamp creatures. And he's taking his talking points from the swamp creatures. So that's kind of why you see this kind of commentary coming from the so-called leader of the opposition, or leader of the so-called opposition. Okay, here's Jessica Rojas, and she says, all 10 cases were fully vaccinated. Surprised that part made the final cut, but don't worry. It would have been much worse without the vaccine. Biggest medical scam in history. Vaccines are not protecting anyone, but the science is settled. They cause harm in everybody. Another reason why mythical herd immunity doesn't exist and never will. Stop blaming the unvaccinated for your vaccine failing. Okay, so here's a quick video on that.
Lindsay, so far there have been 10 confirmed cases of whooping cough here in Carteret County, and officials say it's on the rise in school-aged children. All 10 of the confirmed cases have been in children ages 9 to 14. Whooping cough is highly contagious and is spread through talking, coughing, or sneezing, and it can be very dangerous in young children and especially in infants less than a year old. Health officials say the symptoms to be on the lookout for are a runny nose, sneezing, mild fever, and a cough that slowly gets worse. They say the next stage of pertussis is uncontrolled coughing spells, especially at night, and a high-pitched whoop sound when the person inhales. Every case that we've had, that we've seen so far, has been vaccinated. So you can't take for granted that just because your child's been vaccinated for pertussis, that they don't have the capability of contracting it. Lindsay, so far there have been 10.
Okay, so whooping cough outbreak is what we're talking about here. And these cases of whooping cough are occurring in children that have the vaccine for whooping cough. And why is this happening? Well, we had Dr. Shoemaker on here a little while ago to talk about a lot of the scientific data and what we're seeing and what's happening in the human body. And it does seem to be the case that the spike protein that's enveloped by the C4 white blood cell presents to other other white blood cells as presenting the spike protein on the surface, is the way that he explained it. And the only time we've ever seen the autoimmune response attack the C4 white blood cells that are required for fighting cancers is with the AIDS virus. So that's effectively what I see happening here is everybody has AIDS from taking the vaccine. And now they're getting all of these afflictions and diseases that were effectively stamped out in the West prior to this particular vaccine campaign. So, okay, and here's Rebecca Barnett, and she's saying, disgusting management of the COVID pandemic, Australian MP Russell Broadbent. Okay, I'll just let him talk about this, but this is good to see. This is a member of parliament in Australia standing up and speaking some truth. So, and Australia, they got hit so hard. They had concentration camps and the whole shebang. So yeah, I mean, there is a very serious, I think, and well-founded fear of reprisals for speaking out like this in Australia. But here we go. One courageous MP
saying the vaccine is killing and maiming too many Australians, and that he's completely disgusted that prevention and early treatments have been deliberately cast aside by medical bureaucrats in 2020. Even Channel 7 ran a story last night with the headline, COVID Nightmare, the crippling side effects. If I were a doctor, in light of current litigation overseas, I'd be checking right now whether the government's 2021 assurance that doctors would not be liable was a hollow gesture. Because unlike the vaccine manufacturers who are indemnified by our government, the letter to Elizabeth Hart states that no such indemnity scheme was established for medical professionals administering the COVID vaccines. I note the TGA is no longer interfering with doctors' rights to prescribe ivermectin off-label, and that the AstraZeneca vaccine, which caused blood clots, was associated with unprecedented notification that the TGA has been quietly discontinued. And I was especially pleased to hear two former colleagues, Peter Costello and John Anderson, speaking up last week that Australia had gone way too far during the pandemic. Deputy Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to address the House.
Yeah, So good job on that guy, whoever he is. Okay, and now we're going into the Trump section of the program, and I put that in the description. But Trump was on CNN. They had the town hall with Trump there on CNN, and of course it's an ambush. They're just doing their best to make him look bad. But he's used to it, man. This guy is just an unbelievable warrior. I don't know where he gets the stamina, quite frankly. But this is a good little clip show that I'll show you here, and then we'll get into some other clips. This is about 5 minutes long, but they did a good job, I think, kind of stringing it together here. So let's go ahead and check this out.
At what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience. Yes, and we're going to just win. We're at a point now, we're getting so close. Let's just win it again and straighten out our country.
One other question on this.
You're not stupid at all, but you perhaps are given an agenda or you have an agenda. Look,
I was just saying there's no evidence of that election fraud. You did once tweet.
You're supposed to say that, but I'm glad you say that. But look,
That's
that was
truth,
a horrible
Mr. President.
election. That was a horrible election, and we have to have honest elections in our country. We have open borders. We have said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want. And they turned me down. And in fact, she turned me down. She turned me down.
He's talking about January 6th there, because that's one of the problems for the narrative around the January 6th insurrection that was led by Trump, is that he actually offered to beef up security forces prior to January 6th, and he was turned down by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who the Capitol Police falls under her mandate, and of course it was a very drawn down presence for Capitol Police on the day of January 6th, and that was all by design. It was all to lure those people in there and create the appearance of an insurrection, and a lot of those people are still being held in jail to this day. Some of them are getting charges, but I think a few of the Proud Boys ended up getting some charges. They'll be appealing, I'm sure, and but most people are even getting off on things like trespassing charges, because and they're held for over a year on, say, a trespass charge, and the reason they're getting let out is because of the cell phone video footage that shows the Capitol Police held the doors open and invited them into the Capitol. Yeah, there's all kinds I could tell you about January 6th, but
I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in there right now.
The video, it came out much later after they had already attacked the Capitol. But that video that you referenced there, it wasn't posted until 4:17 p.m.
No, I'll tell you.
They breached the Capitol at 2 p.m.
That video was posted
4:17
yeah,
p.m.
before, actually a little bit before that.
Chris Miller was your acting defense secretary. He says you never gave that order. But back to what happened on that day.
He
You said you weren't.
did not say that.
He has testified that, Mr.
He did
President.
not say that.
But you said you weren't very. Why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. And this was in the form.
That's the same move that he pulled with Anderson Cooper in the lead up to the 2020 election. It's a pretty good move. He just they say some BS, and then he says, "Well, let me check," and he pulls it out.
Of Twitter now use Truth Social. I think it's far superior. Okay, I hope everybody's like. They took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No,
Once
no,
it was
but you
clear,
didn't report that. You know why? Because it was
we
taken
did report
down.
it. I was reporting that
It was taken
tape.
down and it wasn't.
But when
put
it was
back up.
clear to you that they were not, do you feel that you owe him an apology?
No, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislatures, and I think we would have had a different outcome. I really do.
But he doesn't have the authority. The vice president does not have the authority to reject
Are you ready? Let's
those
have this
election
one out
results.
just now because it's interesting. Let's keep it interesting, right? I like Mike Pence very much. He's a very fine man. He's a very nice man. Did they change the law then, saying that you can't do it?
They didn't change the law. They strengthened the law because they were worried about
Oh, they
presidents
strengthened it,
exploiting.
meaning you could do it.
That's not what it means.
Thank you.
They strengthened.
In Washington, D.C., you cannot get a fair trial. You cannot. Just like in New York City, you can't get a fair trial either.
Yeah, they did a good job getting her facial expressions in there.
What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings him up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if he was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President,
this is a fake story, and you don't want to give it credibility.
one
That's why I
thing
didn't go.
you did do in this.
And the thing about Trump is he will say the thing that he's not supposed to say. They're always kind of counting on him to not go there, you know, and say these kinds of things about other people. And he knows that, I think. I think he knows that they're counting on that kind of social pressure to get him to couch his language in their vernacular. And he's just like, no, I'm just going to say it.
I have no idea who the hell. She's a
Mr.
whack
President,
job.
you did not testify in
He'll say the
first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable.
Drill, baby, drill.
You think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans
Well,
are
you might
demanding?
as well do it now because you'll do it later. Because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. We have a very big mental health problem in this country. And again, it's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person that pulls the trigger. And we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect us. And then we had a rigged election. I'm sorry to say it.
The election was not rigged,
okay,
Mr.
good, I
President.
know.
You can't
I'm
keep
glad
saying
you're
that all
saying
night
that.
long.
And so
You
then
cannot-
I was totally exonerated, by the way, just a waste of time and money.
You were impeached over that. You were funded.
Impeached by a crazy woman named Nancy
But the
Pelosi.
question here is, would you give
I
Ukraine?
took the documents. I'm allowed to. You know who else took them? Obama took them. Nixon took them.
Obama did
Reagan
not take
took them.
documents.
Oh, he didn't.
The difference here
He
that I'd
didn't?
like
Take
to
a look.
know.
But you know who
Biden.
took them more than anybody is Joe Biden. He has 1,800 boxes,
That's
and
not
nobody
accurate,
even
Mr.
knows where
President,
they
and you
are.
know that.
1,800, and nobody talks about him.
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person. I'll tell you. Why is it that Biden had 9 boxes in Chinatown, and he gets a lot of money from China? Why is that? And
There
why
is no
why
evidence
aren't
of that,
people?
Mr. President. No, you cannot
why
say
aren't
that. There is
people
no
bringing that
evidence
up?
of that, Mr.
And
President. The one
she
that's
doesn't
happening
understand
in
it.
Georgia, where they are investigating your efforts to overturn.
And when we can't make a call to question election results, then this country ought to just forget about it.
You weren't just questioning the election results.
I was
You were
questioning
asking
the
him
election.
to find you votes.
These people are sick. Anybody that wants this to happen to our country, they're destroying our country, and this should not be allowed to happen.
Yeah, he's right. They are trying to destroy the country. So like, you know, we don't call him the Donald for nothing. And that is, I think, probably the defining characteristic of the Trump phenomenon is that they're counting on us, on regular Canadians and regular Americans, because we're good people, to stay within the bounds of civilized discourse, where, you know, everything's about being polite all the time, and you don't trash this person, or you don't trash that, you don't attack the person, you attack the idea. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to play by your rules. And he says all of the things they hate to hear, and he doesn't care. He'll just go ahead and say he doesn't care how much they hate it. And that's, I think, the tactic we all basically need to adopt. Say the things that they hate. Drives them crazy. It's great. Okay, so here's another clip.
And that thug that killed her.
In that 3 hours, over 140 officers.
This is about January 6th again. The question on the Chiron is, why did it take you 3 hours to tell your supporters to go home on January 6th?
Posted after the first one I just read, though, and that was at 2 o'clock.
But I think the reason the timeline is so critical here, because going back to your influence, in
Here's
that
another
3
one I
hours,
posted.
over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
You know what? She was killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her. At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her. And she was a good person. She was a patriot. There was no reason. There was no reason. And he went on television to brag about the fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging about the fact that he killed her. In that 3 hours, over 140
it was
officers
posted
were
after the
injured.
first one.
Okay, so that's in reference to, well, Ashley Babbitt, the name that he mentioned there. That was the only woman who was killed during the January 6th riot. The media tried to spin a story about Brian Sicknick, who was a Capitol Police officer who died, I think, 2 days after January 6th of heart condition, probably the vax that killed him. And they tried to spin a story saying that the insurrectionists beat him to death with a fire extinguisher. It was completely contrived. But Ashley Babbitt, I saw the video. I watched, like, on the day, I watched all the live cell phone video. Ashley Babbitt tried to climb through a window in a door that had been broken going, I think, toward the chambers. And she was shot just climbing through a window. She didn't break the window. She didn't, she didn't engage in any violence or anything like that. Nobody was threatened by her, but she was climbing through the window and she was shot in the neck and died. And that was, she was a 14-year veteran of the United States Air Force. And by all accounts, like just a stand-up American citizen. So it was really sad to see. So good on Trump. He sticks up for the little guy, man, for all his faults. He seems to like regular Americans. He really likes regular people. And he's basically the only boomer out there who's sticking up for us right now. Well, no, not the only one. We have all kinds of boomers who are coming forward now, like Dr. Robert Malone, who are joining the charge. But Trump is the one leading it. Okay, and here he is showing the receipts. Another short clip here.
So when they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out.
Some very young people applauding there. And it is nice to hear the applause in the CNN studio.
You look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look, January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same time.
Yeah, okay. So good job, Trump. He's not letting them get away with anything, as usual. Okay, and here's Revolver News, and they say Trump crushes town hall, video roundup, Jake Tapper on the verge of tears. Okay, and here is the article. So, okay, they say they canceled Tucker and now they're coming for us, but you can fight back. Cancel Fox Nation and instead click here. Okay, so sorry, that's not part of the article. That looks like solicitation for donations. President Trump was in rare form on the CNN town hall in New Hampshire, hosted by Caitlin Collins, formerly of the Daily Caller. The crowd was very enthusiastic. And here's some tweets. He's getting some questions and some standing ovations. President Trump explained that you can't get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. or New York City. The New Hampshire crowd went wild. And here it says, Trump did not back down on the rigged 2020 election. Okay, I'll show that one. This one's neat.
I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country.
There you go. Not letting them, not giving an inch. Oh, cancel that. And here she is again, or here is again on the Ashley Babbitt one. He says she was a good person. She was a patriot. Here's another one responding to the jury verdict of E. Jean Carroll case and the allegedly hanky-panky that occurred in Bergdorf Goodman dressing room. And yeah, we saw this already. I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. So all kinds of stuff here. This is a pretty good article. There's that expression. Oh my God, look at that. Nasty woman. Look at her. And he called her a nasty woman. He's like, you're a nasty person. Yeah. Okay. And here's Matt Couch. And he says, Caitlin Collins is so undereducated on the Ukraine war that she doesn't even understand that the U.S. is funding 90% to Europeans 10%. Trump tries to explain it to her, but she's sadly clueless. And I don't think that she's looking for real answers here. Again, this is essentially agitation propaganda. So they're trying to set him up to fail here. And this is all an attempt to make him look bad, but he knows that going into it, and he knows how to talk to these people. So here we go.
Can I just follow up on that? You said you don't think in terms of winning and losing. Mr. President, can I just follow up on that? Because that's a really important statement that you just made there. Can you say if you want Ukraine or Russia to win this war?
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying. Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying. And I'll have that done. I'll have that done in 24 hours. I'll have it done. You need the power of the presidency to do it.
But you won't say that you want Ukraine to win. You
know what I'll say? I'll say this. I want Europe to put up more money.
Mother of all drummers is saying, a face only a mother could love. I think he's talking about the interviewer here. Yeah, she's just like oozing this contempt and nastiness. So.
Because they're in for 20 billion, we're in for 170, and they should be, and they should equalize. They have plenty of money. They should equalize. I got with NATO, when I sat down, I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars that they weren't paying under Obama and Bush and all of these other presidents. That's why they're able to help them fight the war, because of the money I got. But I want Europe.
What's happening in Ukraine,
I want Europe to put up more money, because they're laughing at us. They think we're a bunch of jerks. We're spending $170 billion for faraway land, and they're right next door to that land, and they're in for 20. I don't think so.
When it comes to what's...
Yep. Good job on the Donald. And I really like his comment there because I think that's really where that's what's happening across the board. And I talk about, the fourth turning and the boomer generation, and how the boomer generation follows the generational archetype of the prophet, as in the Prophet Muhammad, the people who found our religions, and the religion this time around is postmodernism. And the thing about the prophet is they're well known for, when they're at peak institutional power, for always doubling down on their enemies. There's no compromise. There's none of that. They just double down, drive the rest of us off to total war. And there doesn't seem to be any interest in finding peaceful solutions actually in Ukraine. I don't see any attempt to do that. They're just doubling down all the time. And with Donald Trump, what he's saying there is, look, it's not about winning. Like, we all lose if we go to war. And I think it shows a good contrast with the mentality on the other side. On the other side, it's all about winning. And it's like, no, you don't, you're not winning when you go to war. But they're really stumping for it, right? It's like they're cheering for it. Like this is a sports team or something like that. But these are our young people's lives. And the establishment right now is cavalier with the lives of our young people. I often point out that the boomer generation didn't go to war themselves, and that has a lot to do with it. I believe that they're completely out of touch with the kinds of challenges and suffering that the rest of us face, having to come up in their gluttonous wake and fight their wars. So good on Donald Trump. It's not about winning. It's about saving lives. So here's Matt Couch again. He says, Caitlin Collins is so okay, this is the same tweet. Sorry, I got it there twice. And here is the after party over at CNN, where they're doing a little round table and just talking about how awful Donald Trump is. But we got Byron Donalds at the table, and he's calling them out on their lies. So here we go.
But a couple of things. First of all, town halls are for the voters, not for the press, not for the person who's the moderator. Caitlin spent more time interjecting her own viewpoints or her own views on the situation.
Excuse me, those are actually facts, though.
Now, are you guys not going to interject your views on me, or do I get a chance to speak now?
If you're speaking falsely, those were facts.
The town hall is for the president to speak to the voters of New Hampshire, not for this back and forth with media. That's number one. Hold on. That's number one. Number two, with respect to Ukraine, I totally disagree. He did not say he was just going to give over Ukraine the way you intimate, Van. He did not say that.
He didn't say what he said. He did not say that he would stand for a victory.
What he said is that he would actually look for a solution to end it quickly. He put 24 hours on it, but let's be very clear. What Joe Biden has done has been a disaster, because initially with Ukraine,
I just want to point out that this is kind of the fourth turning in a nutshell here. Okay, you got Van Jones, boomer male. He's stumping for the war. He's with the establishment. The establishment is the boomer establishment. And over here, we've got the Gen Xer who's standing up to him. And that is the revolution that takes place in the fourth turning over and over and over again. It is the real revolution is generational. So yeah, we've got these corrupt, self-serving boomers that are running everything right now, and it's all war, 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 money, money, money. And it's the same thing with the vaccine rollout, doubling down on anybody who even so much as expressing concerns about it. Like they just sort of vilify anybody who isn't completely in the tank for their agenda, and double down, double down, double down. And as you can see, the Gen Xers are having none of it, or at least, you know, the good ones are. And that's not to say that it's all black and white, of course. We're talking about social trends here, and Gen Xers, they can be on the wrong side of it as well, and many of them are. They're the ones you really need to watch out for, according to the fourth turning. It's the Gen Xer demagogue, the one who parrots the establishment. So I would put Justin Trudeau in that category. And yeah, I would tend to think that PP goes into that category as well. The Gen Xer demagogue. And I'll give the example of, the examples of Gen Xer demagogues, not Gen Xers, but the nomad archetype, previous generation, the previous generation of Xers, that would have included Mao and Hitler. So they're the guys you really got to watch out for when you get the Gen Xer demagogue teaming up with the boomer male, with the prophet generational archetype. That's when you get a genocide. That is, as far as I am able to ascertain, that seems to be the formula for genocide. And that goes back to even, say, Joshua's battle in the town of Jericho, where the elder prophet Yahweh told him to lay waste to all the men, women, children, livestock, everything. But the virgins you may keep for yourselves, for reasons better left imagined than described.
Joe Biden wanted to give Vladimir Zelensky a ride out of Dodge. He wanted to give him a plane ride. And it wasn't until people in Moscow, in Ukraine, here in the United States said this invasion is wrong that Joe Biden reversed course.
Do you want a victory in Ukraine? Do you want a victory in Ukraine?
I'm just trying to respond to everything that's been coming up on the table.
Black or white?
Last thing, let me say this.
It's all black or white with them.
We spent 22, 23 minutes.
With us or against us. That's what it is.
It's talking about January 6th. We could have been talking about a whole lot of other issues instead of doing that for the first half hour or so. But let me be very clear. What was said in this town hall about National Guard troops that were authorized by Caitlin was wrong. I'm on the oversight committee. I was in 2 hearings on January 6th. It was testified in oversight that Donald Trump authorized National Guard troops on January 4. He followed up in a call with then acting Secretary of Defense on January 5, trying to see where the deployment was on those troops. That is testimony in the Oversight Committee. Everybody testified in Oversight Committee when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House, except one organization, and that was the Capitol Police.
Did you read the
because
Secretary
Nancy
of
Pelosi
Defense's
would
book?
not allow that. I'm telling you what was testified to in the Oversight Committee under oath.
Well, let me just correct.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, they're never going to accept anything that is discordant with the narrative that they're trying to push, and the narrative they're trying to push is to drive us all to war over there in Europe. So, so here's okay. I think this might be the same video again. What did I do? Did I get this all screwed up? Okay, we'll skip over that, and we're back to our philosophy meme for the day. So before I let you go, just remember that hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny, close quote. And that's Christopher Marcus, and I'm not familiar with his work, but yeah, iron sharpens iron, right? So that's a big part of the reason I think why we send young men in particular off to war is for that character development that comes with it, an appreciation for human suffering that comes with it, and I think that those of us who have been to war ourselves are a hell of a lot less cavalier with the lives of young people that are coming up now. We tend to be a lot more reserved when it comes to these kinds of things because we know the kind of hardship that it entails. So there's nobody in Canada, I think, that wants to avoid any kind of political violence more than the veteran community, and that's why. It's because we went off and did that ourselves. So I'll throw to a couple of comments here before I take off. And the mother of all drummers over on YouTube is saying they sure don't like hearing the truth. No, they do not. Everything they say is it just kind of withers and dies as soon as you get a guy like Trump in there who's just willing to speak the unabashed truth, and he's unapologetic even in his choice of wording. He'll call people names, he'll do all the things they're counting on him not doing. And that's why he's so effective, I think. And Darlene is saying, awesome podcast. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, Darlene, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for being here and supporting. And Cynthia is saying, thanks, Jeff, as always. Appreciate all you do to keep us informed. My pleasure, darling, or my pleasure, Cindy. Thanks a lot. And Steve is saying, stay free, friends. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and sign off. And I'll add to that. I'll say, stay frosty and stay safe out there, troops.